helpless. I see telling an addict that they're helpless and powerless as enabling them to just continue to do what they're doing. And how is enabling anybody a loving act? When we help to keep somebody in addiction, how is that loving?
Hi everyone, my name is Rod Jans, and you're listening to the Get Inspired Talks podcast. For this episode of the Get Inspired Talks podcast, we visit with Candace Plattor. In this episode, we talk about the power of choice when it comes to addiction. Candace was an opioid addict for 15 years, resulting from doctors' prescriptions for Crohn's disease. She now has 31 plus years clean and sober, and she's an addictions therapist working exclusively with families who are struggling with addiction. She's also a world-renowned speaker and author of the award-winning book, Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself, the top 10 survival tips for loving someone with an addiction. If you enjoy the Get Inspired Talks podcast, please make sure you leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on. That's the best way you can help us help others find the show. Now please welcome Candace Plattor to the Get Inspired Talks podcast.
Worked there as an addictions counselor for 16 years. That was after I had my own breakdown with addiction. I developed Crohn's disease in the early 70s, and when I was diagnosed, they really didn't know what to do with me. The doctors didn't know that disease. It was kind of new, and so they did what they could do, and one of the things they could do was give me a lot of addictive medications. So I was taking Valium, and I was taking codeine, and I was taking other oxys and different opioids, and basically became addicted to opioids for about 15 years before reaching a bottom with that and deciding that I wasn't going to do that anymore. You know, I still have Crohn's, but I manage it in a different way. So I really wanted to give back to the addiction community. So I went into addiction counseling, and I'm now an addiction therapist in private practice. And in this past July, celebrated 31 years clean and sober. So yeah, I think my past, my childhood, and what I've been through in my own life has really led me to where I am now, working mostly with families that have addiction, that are struggling with addiction. So, that was a lot. Well, you know, it was very traumatic at the time. I can look back at it with a lot more ease now, but it was terrible 31 years ago. I was working, and I was on a break from work, and I didn't feel very well with Crohn's, and that was what was happening for me most days. It's not like that anymore for me, but that's what it was like back then. And so I laid down on a couch in the staff room, and I started thinking about having enough pills to be able to kill myself. And it was the first time I'd really thought about that. And I started to really look at that. I knew I could time it so nobody would find me. I knew I had the opportunity, I had the method, I had all of that. And as a counselor, I know that those are the things with suicide that you have to look at, right? And there I was in that position. So I went home that night. I called a crisis center, and they referred me to a suicide counseling place, prevention, of course, place. And the doctor that I met there suggested that I voluntarily sign myself into the hospital's psych ward, which at that time looked just like Cuckoo's Nest with the gray concrete walls and everything. I met some people there who were trying to get off drugs and alcohol, and they were going to Narcotics Anonymous right across the street. So I started going with them. And, you know, there are some really wonderful parts of 12-step programs, but the problem for me was that in step 1 of 12-step programs, they tell you you're powerless over your addiction. And we have to actually say that, basically. You know, we have to work the steps and say that we're powerless. And I really didn't feel like I was powerless because I had already made the choice that I wasn't going to use anymore. I was done. I was done. I didn't want to kill myself. I didn't want to go back to that place, and I was going to stop what I was doing. And that was a really hard one for me. So also in 12-step programs, they look at addiction as a disease. It's called the disease model. And all I can say is that I have a disease that I don't have any choice over whether I have it or not. I can't just say I'm not going to have Crohn's disease anymore. I wish I could. It doesn't work that way. So I had a difficult time with the concept of addiction being a disease, because I could just let go of the addiction. Not that it's that simple, but I could let go of the addiction. I can't just let go of Crohn's, you know. So those were the two things that I had trouble with. So I don't work from a disease model. I work as a therapist. I work from a choice model. I believe we're not powerless. We're not helpless and hopeless. We're not labeled for life. You know, we have a choice about whether we're going to stay in active addiction or whether we're going to go into some kind of active recovery. If it wasn't a choice, I would not have 31 years clean and sober, right? So clearly, and there's thousands of other people like me all over the world who have made that choice. So that's where I come from. And some people are not in alignment with that, and they don't want to work with somebody who believes that. But there are a lot more people now who, and it's also being supported by science now, that this isn't the same as a disease, and we aren't powerless. We have choice. So a lot of people come to me, they hear me talk, they read my book, and they come to me because of what I believe and how I work. So that's very gratifying for me. Those of us who really get stuck in that, like I did, you know, we need to befriend ourselves. We need to be compassionate, because this is the key. There are reasons for why I became addicted. There are reasons for why I needed to hide from my pain, but I don't want to use those reasons as excuses anymore. And that's the difference.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the book, Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. What is it, the top 10?
Survival tips for loving someone with an addiction.
Right on. And that's available on Amazon. It's available on your website. Yep. One of the things we want to do through the Get Inspired Talks events and the podcast is to have some sort of a challenge for people. So I'm wondering if you could throw a challenge out there for people today. And then if people decide to do something about it, please let us know on our website or on our social media channels. So what's one takeaway you would hope that people would get from our interview today to put into practice, to apply?
So I'm not going to tell you the one that's in my talk.
Yeah, don't do that. No, let's have it.
I'll have to kill you. So you know.
Exactly. We want people to come on October 20th. So something else.
Sure,
yeah.
For sure. Okay. And this one is probably, I mean, that one's of a lot of importance, I think, but this one may be even more important. And that is, if you're involved with an addict who is still in addiction, love that person enough to do the right things for them. Stop enabling them. Stop arguing for their limitations. Stop believing that they can't do this because they can. Stop believing that they're powerless because they aren't. And love them enough to do the right things. And if you're not sure what the right things are, you can read my book. You can fill out a questionnaire. Maybe you and I can talk on the phone, figure out whether we're fit to work together. You can get counseling in other places, people who know how to deal with loved ones of addicts. Get some help if you don't. There are other parenting groups out there and other support groups out there that deal with this exact issue. But do the right things. Be willing to love that person enough to stretch yourself to change what you're doing. How's that for a challenge? They need the help. And, you know, there are so many of us who, I don't want to create an us and them. I'm not trying to do that. But there are so many of us who have been through these issues and come out the other side and feel good about ourselves and feel good about our lives and know how to take you there. We know how to get you there. So you want to find somebody who's been through some pain in their lives, who's been through some addiction or has been through some hardship and has learned to make the lemonade from the lemons, and get somebody like that. I remember the first counselor I had, she told me that she didn't have any addictions. And I remember looking at her thinking, I like the person she is, but I don't know if I can work with her because she doesn't know where I've come from. She doesn't know what I'm dealing with. And I didn't believe her anyway. Everybody's got addictions. They can go to my website, which is CandacePlattor.com. So you have to spell my name right though, both of them. So it's CANDACE. I like to say ace, not ice, because most people spell it with an I. Plattor, P as in Peter, LATTOR. So CandacePlattor.com. I also have a YouTube page that has a lot of my recordings. So if you want to hear some more of what I have to say, and there's a couple of media pages on my website as well, articles for you to read. You can sign up to be on my mailing list. You can sign up for a free chapter of my book on my website. Yeah, there's just a lot there. So feel free to come visit and explore. Oh, and I also have a Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself Facebook page with like 6,000 loved ones, people who are in the same boat as you are if you have an addicted loved one. So come, take a look, maybe join the page. Yeah, there's help out there for you.
Yeah, we just want to remind people of the event on October 20th. If you're listening to this after the event, please look us up on getinspiredtalks.com. The goal is to have events all over North America. So this one that we're talking about on October 20th will just be the first. And people like Candace and other people who are stirring it up and maybe have controversial ways of approaching things, or just want to help the world like Candace does and want to bring hope to the world, we'll be speaking there. So thanks again, Candace.
So I just want to say goodbye to everybody. And yes, there is hope. There is definitely always hope.